I heard someone discussing this Salesforce issue where you create multiple triggers and a flow and you run into unexpected behavior, and it's hard to diagnose it because each trigger, say it's after a creator an insert or update, and then you've got a flow that runs after creation, and then you've got a trigger that happens after an update, and they're unrelated objects and it's hard to diagnose them. So an example being you've got an account, you have some number of open cases on them. Like here on the right, you'll see there's this little demo account and there's three child cases. But when you run these triggers, because you want to do essentially like a roll up to find the number, open case count is unexpected. The increments and the decrements don't work. And as they were describing this, I was go, yeah, that would be a great sort of trailhead super badge or project to go in and try to figure out how to fix it. So I was like, well, why don't I use Claude Code as an excuse to show some people who maybe haven't used Claude Code that much in the Salesforce ecosystem. I kind of wrote up a blog post that describes this situation, and then I'm going to had a Claude Code prompt to create the problem. It was a brand new Trailhead org, which is like a developer edition of Salesforce, and we me and Claude went and using pretty much just the prompt, a couple tweaks for a few things, but pretty much just like straight ahead, generated this problem in a Trailhead org. It's kind of like if we were making our own super badge and we needed to like seed it with the data. And you can go ahead and you could like follow along. Every single steps here, create the new Trailhead account or Trailhead playground, and then go through it and set it all up. Long description of this sorts of permutations of what can go wrong here. So I first, by seeding the broken state, there's a prompt down below that creates the flow, creates the custom field, adds it to the page layout, adds a field level security, all that sort of stuff that shows this problem with these two triggers and with this flow. Then in phase two, which is where I'm about right now, I did the other part a little bit cooking show just to set it up, but you can recreate it yourself by just getting into Claude Code and essentially pasting this in, and you will get to the same result where we're set up. And then now I'm going to do this second step of trying to see if a separate Claude session can figure it out. So this was the session that generated the problem, and we'll do another Claude Code session. That has to do with a plugin MCP server. We won't worry about that. All right. And then what we're going to do here is put in a prompt that is going to ask Claude to do some static analysis. It's going to use the Salesforce CLI to pull down, I guess I could just read the prompt, but it's going to pull down triggers, flows, and other custom metadata, do static analysis on that metadata, and then try to determine a fix, then deploy changes, then confirm the fix works. So here's let's just get like straight down into like to the prompt of what we're going to ask it to do. I have a Trailhead playground org with a known data integrity problem. The field open case count C on the account object is supposed to track the number of open cases for that account, but it returns incorrect values after cases are created for their status change. I wanted to read the prompt aloud to at least show a bit that I'm trying to isolate the Claude sessions and not tell it where the problem lies. Not like, oh, there's a problem in this trigger conflicting with this flow. I, though, as like a Salesforce developer, know the sort of issue, what might be a root cause. Still being relatively broad here. Use the Salesforce CLI to retrieve all the Apex classes, triggers, flow metadata. I mean, if you've got other like old workflows, process builder, you could pull down that metadata, anything that you can get from the Salesforce CLI. Pull it down, look at the apex and the flows, do static analysis, diagnose, write a clear explanation of the root cause. So that's what I'm hoping as we paste this stuff in, does it, and then we get an explanation of the root cause, describe what each piece of automation is doing, how they interact, and why the fields ends up with the incorrect values. Okay, so we'll paste all this in. We're hoping we get a good description of why this is wrong, and then a fix. So let's see it. I'm just gonna straight copy. I can see the problem already. Multiple automations. Oh, that was quick. Okay, diagnosis. What's happening? 3 separate automations all firing in the same case. Case insert trigger after insert. On every case insert, reads the account's current count, adds 1 new case, writes it back. Bug. Blindly increments regardless of whether the case is open or closed. A case inserted with status closed still gets counted. Case status trigger after update. Detects is closed transitions and increments decrements using arithmetic on the current field. Okay, so thinks no bug. Flow. Record triggered, save, creator updates. Also fires on case create and update. On create, it adds +1. Again, regardless of close status. On update, it detects open close transitions and adds subtracts 1. The root cause double counting. On case insert, both the apex trigger and flow fire. Each reads the account's open case count, adds 1, writes it back. The flow runs after the trigger in the same transaction, so it reads the value of the trigger already incremented and adds 1 again. Count is 2. Count is 2x, too high on insert. On case status update, both the apex trigger and the flow fire, and both apply the same delta double adjustment. All 3 use increment decrement arithmetic instead of aggregate queries, make them vulnerable to race conditions and stale value bugs. Step 4, build the fix. I need to deactivate the flow, replace the triggers, plus 2 handlers with 1 trigger, plus 1 handler using aggregate count, write a test class. All right, looks good. Delete the old triggers, deactivate the flow. Claude is pretty darn good with figuring out metadata dependencies and order of operations. The CLI is just really like informative and that the information is used for short feedback loops for Claude. So you can when you're deploying similar sorts of components or similar types of metadata, uh, keep a file of lessons learned, because there's certain things that you create a custom field on a standard object and then you can't view it, but you have to make sure to give field level security for that custom field, and it's not part of the obvious metadata So a little bit of a lesson learned. Anyway, as you do this more, after a session with Claude, say like, hey, write me up lessons learned for this sorts of metadata and stash it in a markdown file and then keep these all in a folder. It makes iterating through these Salesforce projects much more reliable. Maybe reliable is not the right word. It's just more straightforward. You don't have to like bounce around and have Claude fix its own problems. You get more of like closer to a one-shot solution. Interesting. We'll use the tooling API directly via REST. Okay. API request. Sure. Okay. Always learn new, interesting things just watching Claude do stuff. Definitely come into situations trying to automate Salesforce projects to where certain things there is no API endpoint to do the thing. But what you can do is like you can just have Claude tell you where to go, and so it'll give you pretty good instructions in the setup about where to find it. And if you want to be really hands off, you can also use a Playwright MCP, so Playwright for the end-to-end browser testing, and the Playwright MCP, easy to install through Docker Desktop. Then you could just tell Claude of like, if it can't do a thing for the API, it'd be like, hey, why don't you just go log in and go do this? So since it's in the has the CLI is already authenticated, it can just do the SF org open, and then from that point, no, that wouldn't quite work because SF org open would be in our session, not its session. I'm not sure. Let me not try to hypothesize too much. It's certainly solvable. What is really nice with the MCP server is that for Playwright is it does can do stepwise browser automation. So if you need to put in like username, password, multi-factor authentication, one-time password stuff, what the Playwright MCP can do, you can have it launch headed in a Chrome testing instance, and it'll just get to the login, and you can type the things in, and then in the little debug panel, hit resume, and then it will go around and do all the stuff in the UI that you need. For Salesforce, I usually just have it tell me where to go and set up, and I go and I click. It's faster, but the that MCP stepwise playwright stuff is very, very interesting, and you should definitely look at it. Okay, spend a little time. Pass. The verification script executed successfully. All assertions passed. Fix applied, which is deployed a single consolidated trigger, and which is a best practice anyway, instead of having two triggers. Instead of, you can only have a trigger for a condition or event, but it's best practice to have them all into one trigger class and a test class with 4 test methods. Nice. Let's see. Let's have it create I guess we could do it ourselves, or we could just have it set up an account for us. If I could click and manually test it, but let's see. Let's just have it set up an account with Well, let's see. Actually, our conflict account demo should then now be fixed. If we just add a new case, we have 3, old value of 4. If we add or edit a case, let's edit this case and change it to status closed. Why is there not a closed there? All right, I don't want to get into changing pick list values on the case, so let's just make a new one. Private medium, case origin, web, sure. Count. I think that's all we need. Names. Needs a name for this thing, right? Test case 4 after Claude fix. Save. 4. And then we should still see open case count 3. Is that correct? Let's see what's on these cases. Ah, okay, yeah, because one's closed. Cool. So it had overcounted. We made a new one, and then it caught itself up, and so now we're at 3, and the math works. Cool. All right, and that was pretty quick to get to the solution. It was much, much harder, or took longer to create the problem. So hopefully you find that interesting, and if anything, you see that using Claude Code with the Salesforce CLI is tremendously powerful, and you find some ways to explore some more.